Well, good morning, everybody. How you doing today? It is a Wednesday morning, and here we are at the middle of the week. Oh my gosh, we're here. This is often the most difficult time of the week, but we will make it, as you've made it probably through, I would guess, thousands of Wednesdays. You'll get through this one too. Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Valeri. I'm a licensed counselor. I've been counseling people for 20 years. I've been married for 20 years. And so here I am sharing with you a little bit of my wisdom, such as it is. And I'm here to talk today about core values. Now, why am I talking today about core values? Because core values are very important to your life and to your relationship. Because you have to know what you stand for. All right? And this might get a little dicey for some people out there, but core values are very important. Sorry, I'm eyeballing my coffee. I love it so much. I can't leave it alone. Anyway, core values. So how do we know what our core values are? I think a lot of times that gets tricky. And this plays into some of the anger management work I've done with people, because sometimes they get angry and they're like, well, this person made me angry. And I'm like, okay, so it made you angry. That's interesting. How do they do that? Well, they just did something I didn't like. Okay. All right, cool. How do you know you didn't like it? Well, duh. Wouldn't you like this? It's like, yeah, okay. And so I usually get people around to the notion that there are some rules for right and wrong that we have for life. And those rules for right and wrong are usually based somewhere in these concepts of core values. So how do you figure that out? So first of all, think about religion and politics. I'm not going to talk about religion and politics today because I don't want to get kicked off Facebook. Right? I don't want to get flamed by people who are like, oh my gosh, you're whatever, whatever kind of person they don't like, whatever it is. All right. Anyway, religion and politics have something to do with your core values, the core beliefs. My core beliefs is I'm a Christian, I'm a Christ follower, whatever you want to call it. I've been following God, following Christ for my whole life since I was 5. So that's just part of who I am. It's part of my core value system. Y'all don't like it? That's too bad. Right? But it's one of those things that has helped guide my core values. It's helped me guide who I am, what I do, what I think, what I believe. All right. And to be fair, I think there's something to be said for that. A lot of our country is founded on principles that are in scripture, whether you like them or not. All right. But at the end of the day, for me personally, it's what guides who I am and what I decide to do. And with regard to anger, it does impact the things that make me upset, things that make me angry. And so what I usually encourage people to do is say, hey, take a look at those core values. Well, how do you know what they are? And so typically what I'll say to people is, all right, write down stuff that makes you mad. Okay, this thing, maybe they go umbrella, like big picture anger. They're like, hey, it's my wife that makes me mad, or my kids make me mad. Why don't you put some comments below about some of those things that make you mad? If you don't have a pen and paper, write some of those things down now. Go ahead and pop them in the comments section. And I say, okay, cool. These things make you mad. Now ask yourself the question, why does this make me mad? And put some should responses there. And a lot of times what people find is that these should responses, these should or shouldn'ts, are these really strongly held beliefs that people have. And it usually guides and affects the way that they talk to other people, the way they interact with other people. And so that's just one way of kind of finding your core values. Another way is just kind of saying, what do I believe? I'm going to sit down and write down things I believe. What do I believe in? And do you really believe it? Like, sometimes I find that people sort of, when they latch on to like a political figure or they latch on to some faith or whatever, they're kind of like, oh yeah, I totally believe that. And maybe they say it because they're afraid that other people won't like them if they don't believe in that, or they believe it just because, oh yeah, I believe in that, and it's like, well, do you though? And sometimes some people, you press them a little bit further and it's like, oh, well, maybe I don't really believe that. Okay. So I kind of look at it from the perspective of, really think about what it is that you believe in yourself, because your actions are guided by these things. Okay. The things that you do every day, the way you interact with people are guided by these core values. You might say, yeah, I totally, I'm accepting of everybody on the planet. And then there's some people that you're like, no, I'm not. Okay. And this has been this way with me. I've had to challenge myself because I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I'm totally good. Blah, blah, blah. The next thing I know, I'm kind of like, oh, you know, find the limitations of your core values. And bear in mind too, there's no right or wrong answer here. Okay, there's no like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, you know what, you really should be accepting of everybody. Because there's some people that you just don't like, and that's okay. You're allowed to not like them. I know, hot take, very controversial, but there are people you're allowed to not like. It's okay. There are people that you're allowed to like. There are people like, yeah, you know what? These are my kind of people. These are the kind of people I really enjoy hanging out with. Okay, so think about how you personally are engaging in your own core values, and think about who you really are, because this is really important for your relationship. Let's bring it back around to the stuff I talk about here with regard to marriage. Okay, if you're getting married to somebody who doesn't align with your core values, all right, you're gonna have a tough time. I'm just saying. Okay, you might have it easy. You guys might complement each other perfectly. All right, but what I've seen is that when there are people who have conflicting core values, a lot of times they have difficulty working through their marriage problems. All right, so okay, great. I have different core values from my wife. How do I work this out? All right, well, you guys got to sit down and figure things out. What's a deal breaker for you? All right, because a lot of times with core values, we have things that are super deal breakers, like, oh my gosh, I can't even handle the fact that you think this way, you believe this way. It could be about money. It could be about raising the kids. It could be about how you spend your spare time. Okay, there's a lot of like big deal core values about some of these things, and people get upset about them. They argue about them, and it's no good. All right, so you have to come to some common ground. You have to come to some compromise. There has to be some way for you and your wife or your spouse or whatever. You guys have to sit down and kind of figure out, all right, where do our core values align, and where do they not align? And if there are places where they don't align, there's places where you can kind of drop that. So you know what? Well, what does that mean if we don't agree on these things? Well, we just don't agree on it. All right. Now, obviously, there's important stuff like raising the kids. Like, for example, one of the big ones I see a lot with couples when they come into my office is screen time for the kids. It's a big issue. And I blame COVID for this. I do. I don't just blame COVID. I blame the way that people responded to it. I blame the way it was all set up. All right. I'll forgive those people. I'll never forget what happened, because kids now are on screens 24/7. If they're not, they become raging lunatic demons. It's really, really weird. Okay. So I have parents coming in and they're like, man, how do I get my kids off the screens? And you got one parent who's like, these kids need to get off the screens. It's not good for them. You got another parent who's like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. I need these kids on screen so I can make dinner. And so now it's kind of like, okay, what's the right answer here? We have difficulty with core values. We have problems understanding each other. We have problems trying to figure out what the right answer is. Okay, there's a compromise in here somewhere. It doesn't have to be extremes. So challenge one for you today is that it doesn't have to be one extreme or the other. You can have different core values, and you can sit down and come to common ground. All right, so step one, it doesn't have to be extreme. Step two, find the common ground. Where's the common ground in all this? I don't think any of those people who are like, oh my gosh, my kids need to do less screen time, are saying they should do no screen time. Okay, there's very few parents I've run into who are like, yeah, you know what, they should have no screens and they should never have that ever again. Because at the end of the day, like it or lump it, we're all sitting here in front of screens at some point for some reason. There's some people out there who aren't doing it. God bless them. Okay, but at the same time, it's part of life. So find the common ground. Where is it? How much is that? Okay, what's the situation? Okay, so what are we doing? All right. So, anyways, my point in all this is to try to understand yourself and try to understand your spouse a little bit better. That's ultimately at the end of the day what I'm looking to do, is to encourage you to understand yourself. Because once you understand yourself, you can then do your best to communicate that to your spouse. You can then you can communicate to your spouse about what it is that you believe, and then you'll need to understand where they're coming from. Hey, I'm really curious. What do you think about this? I know the kids have been on screens all day today. Help me understand what's going on with you. Oh, geez, I'm totally wiped out. I've been doing laundry, dishes, cooking, you name it. I've been cleaning up stuff, and they're no help because they don't want to do it, or they're too young, or whatever the reason is. Try to understand where those people are coming from. Try to understand where your spouse is coming from, so that you can kind of say, oh, okay, there's a reason behind those core values. Okay, even for you, there's a reason behind your core values. There's a reason why you believe what you believe. And they're good reasons, okay? So, don't shortchange yourself. Don't shortchange your spouse with regard to your core values. It's important to understand those things so that you can come to common ground, so you can come together and understand what it is that you can do to work together and have a really solid relationship. Anyways, I'm Jim Valeri. That's Coffee with Jim for today. If you like what you're seeing here, like me, follow me, whatever it is we do here on social media, check it out. I'm going to be live every weekday morning at around 7:15, Tuesdays around 7. I'm going to try and figure out 7 o'clock. I really think if I can get my butt out of bed and do 7 o'clock, I think I can do it and then make it consistent across the board. But around between 7 and 7:15, I'm usually on here. But if you have something you want me to address, if you're like, hey man, 20 years marriage experience, 20 years counseling experience, man, I would love to hear your opinion about this. Cool. Put it in the comments. Hook me up. Help me understand what you want me to talk about. And I would love to address that issue, especially if you're not seeing it live, you're seeing it later. Cool. Throw me a comment. Love it. We'd love to address that. Anyways, thanks so much for watching today. Really appreciate it. Have yourself a fantastic Wednesday, and I'll see you tomorrow.